Thank you, Dr. Sameer, for joining us. Uh, it is going to be a very interesting and useful session, I feel, and all of us have been looking forward to it. Dr. Sameer is the founding director of Quick Care Medical Solutions, an integrated home healthcare platform covered with advanced telemedicine systems. Dr. Sameer has 12 years of critical care experience in the top hospitals of Mumbai. He's worked with both government and private hospitals alike. Through the last year, he was at the front line serving thousands of COVID patients. He was not home for many weeks and months, being there in the front line, taking care of a lot of people. Dr. Sameer, thank you once again for joining us here.
Thank you.
Without further ado, we could probably go on to hearing from Dr. Sameer responses to some of the queries which have been posted by our participants when they registered for the webinar. So we'll start off with some of the Q&A, plunge into some of the myths that needs to be busted about COVID. Hear from Dr. Sameer on the vaccines that are out today to help us with this COVID scenario. And we'll again hope to share and ask him more questions that pour in on the chat. Doctor, one of the first questions that we've had regarding this is, if a person is COVID positive and asymptomatic, but with a good sense of smell and taste, how important is it to get tests? The whole detailed set of chest X-ray, CT swab, so on, done immediately. What would be your recommendation?
Okay, firstly, a very good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be part of this promising startup, Elda. Okay, so now coming to the important topic of COVID-19. I heard the question. So replying to that, firstly, if you are positive with COVID, immaterial of the symptoms like loss of taste, loss of smell, whatever it might be, to get appropriately tested is something that is very essential, because the symptoms may not come at first. You might get tested positive much earlier. There is a good time of incubation till the time you do turn symptomatic. No doubt, there is a vast number of people who are COVID positive, but they remain asymptomatic throughout. But still, more than 50% people, they may test positive while they are asymptomatic, but later on may develop the clinical symptoms, which may progress on to something much more serious. So, without just, putting your foot off the pedal, it's best follow the real-time guidelines, which all your family physicians are very well trained by now. Please get tested. Yes, the question of getting high radiological tests like the CT scans, now that will depend per se on your clinical staging, what kind of a clinical stage that you are in, So while you are asymptomatic, it is not an absolute necessity, mind you, to do CT scan. World over, the radiology department heads, they will not recommend CT scan as the first line of investigation. This all comes into picture once you do require a hospital-based monitored treatment. Only then will the CT scan and the higher investigations will come into play. But rest of the lab investigations are very much necessary, and especially for people who are having comorbidities like blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, kidney disease, any other form of illnesses per se, which they are battling chronically. All of these people are very vulnerable population. If you've been diagnosed in an asymptomatic condition, lucky for you, do not take things for granted. Get yourself tested, understand what is the physiology of COVID 19, and be realistic and very candid about approaching your family physician without wasting much time. Because earlier you find yourself in the hands of a good family physician, the safer you and your family will be.
Perfect. So, as a follow-up to this, Dr. Samir, if a person is asymptomatic but COVID positive, what is the time frame for which they need to be self-isolated, or what are the kind of precautions that they need to take? And that has come in as another question. What is the prescribed number of days we need to be in self-isolation, and when can we resume a normal routine of going out and meeting people or going back to office? Can you help us with any sort of recommendations and protocols that people can follow?
Sure. Okay, there are very standard guidelines on these, whether be it asymptomatic or be symptomatic. The standard 14-day isolation rule applies to each and every one. The normal incubation period, what we average it out, is between 2 to 14 days.
Thank you, Dr. Samir. It's really important that we understand the importance of self-isolation. But there are times when we do not show any symptoms, and we do not know if we need to get tested. So, one of the questions is, should we get tested once in a while because you don't have any symptoms, but we are seeing that suddenly when you do a test, you have a COVID positive result? Because sometimes the office is making it compulsory that you need to come in with a COVID negative result to be part of the office system nowadays.
Yes. See, there are two aspects here. One, of course, it is the routine screening that you are saying, per se, in corporate offices, that they do make it mandatory these days. Yes, you can come positive even if you have no symptoms. As high as 72% of people have been found globally. They have not had much symptoms yet have turned positive. So, yes, you are very well capable of transmitting the virus despite the fact that you are asymptomatic. That is your immunity, and you are able to fight it off well. Does not really mean that the others around you will be safe in the same manner. Exactly why? The testing remains the core of this novel coronavirus. We call it novel because it is new, it's unknown. We are still understanding, researching aspects of COVID 19 by the day. Until we know more, we should be always more cautious, and testing forms the basis of entire paradigm of COVID 19. So please, even if you're asymptomatic and someone around you, or say if you have been in a very, very high exposure area of COVID 19, before you go and mingle around with your elders, it's best be safe and get tested. That is something I would always advise. I've seen many, many, many people taking lightly, believing that they are immune or they would not cause harm. I understand they are innocent, but nevertheless, virus doesn't understand these aspects. It behaves in its own physiology, and it eventually leads to much more death and mayhem. Rather, prevention remains the best choice, and cautious approach remains the best choice. So please get tested whenever it is that you do feel that you have been exposed, or you have rather shown even the mildest of symptoms. Please get tested. Period.
Thank you, Dr. Samir. Thank you. But once a particular person has had COVID, what are the chances of COVID relapsing? Is it usually a strong or mild version if it relapses? Is another question from one of our participants.
See, there are aspects of COVID 19, frankly, we are still understanding. But by far, the larger consensus has been formed at around, say, 3 months of time post your COVID infection. Once you have tested zero COVID negative, a cutoff of 100 days is followed by the Indian government. But there is a very decent research recently published in the NEGM, which is the UK journal, where they say the ones who have tested antibodies positive after the recovery from COVID 19 infection, they seem to have an immunity lasting as good as 6 months.
Okay.
So, what I suggest, if you have been COVID positive, you all have shown the antibodies, then for 3 months there is no need to test again, and you are very much safe.
Okay. So the other question that we have from Vinny Goel is, how effective is the vaccination in case a person has recovered from COVID? Given that we are all today in the vaccination scheme of things.
Yes, we are in the vaccination era, thankfully, and it's of course one of the wonders of science. 2021 will be remembered for that. But vaccine, mind you, it prevents severe form of infection. It's not going to prevent altogether a COVID 19 infection. So let's get the facts right. While you are understanding vaccination, it is very important to know that it is not going to completely prevent the infection. All it is going to do is that reduce the severity of the infection and most probably prevent death in the patients who will be infected with COVID-19. That is where we are targeting current batch of COVID-19 vaccines. So even if you have the immunity or even if you do show good antibody titers, it won't be a bad option to get immunized again.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, but the approach should be, in a scientific manner would be, if you have COVID positive for 3 months, it is not a necessity. Take that as a cutoff. Post that, you can measure your antibody titers. There are cutoff values. If you have antibody titers which are very well sustained above that, then you can opt for not taking a vaccine, wait for better vaccines to come in.
Sure.
But I would suggest for people who are having comorbid conditions, are of that aged category, who are at higher risks, they should get it at the earliest. Whether or not they have been positive earlier or no, please get yourself a vaccine. It is not going to do much harm. Okay, the goods are much, much higher as compared to the harm it can cause. Please get yourself vaccinated despite the fact that you have already tested positive.
So, Dr. Samir, at this point, if you could, give us an understanding of all the vaccine options available today for us, and give us a brief, maybe even if it means giving us a bit of an education on the options available today on the whole COVID vaccine, that would be great.
Okay, so there's been a lot of discussion on the vaccine. Firstly, let's be very grateful that yes, science and the modern medicine has been really successful at creating a vaccine within a year. That itself is a big feat, and we must congratulate, especially our scientists. We have an indigenous vaccine which has been created by Indian people altogether. So let's go briefly into understanding of all the types of vaccines, okay? And then we come to the vaccines which are currently available and what are the future prospects that we would want to, understand and expect. What can we expect per se in the future? So there are certain types of vaccines. There are a lot of materials out there, but I'll still give it a quick, review. There is a whole virus vaccine, which is what we have as Covaxin, where I'll shortly explain you. It's the whole virus per se, which you have in that vaccine. The entire virus with all its antigenic elements that is inactivated with a process where this virus cannot replicate in the body anymore. So, while providing a good antigenic stimulus to our immune system to recognize it and get adapted to it and develop the fighting cells, both the humoral and the cell mediated immunity, it will not lead to per se an infection in the body. Okay, while your immune system will learn to adapt and develop the entire antibody system against this virus. This is what is the inactivated virus. Covaxin, made by Bharat Biotech, is from this technology. It's a whole virus vaccine. Other whole virus vaccines have been polio, influenza. These are the vaccines which we have grown up with. We have our kids taking them regularly. So the general public could very well understand. These are very sorted and safe modes of vaccine delivery. So you can be rest assured that the technology that we have in building these vaccines are pretty much safe. The other is the live attenuated vaccine. These are live viruses, the viruses that are living, but they are subdued. They are processed in such a fashion that they cannot lead to an infection. Now there is Codagenix, which is also one of the products which is in the pipeline, and as of now it's in the phase 3 trial. So we will have one more vaccine, say next 3 months or so. These live attenuated vaccines have already been in the system. Polio, BCG, chickenpox, all these vaccines are live attenuated vaccines. So again, you can be very well assured that we have a very vast experience in making these vaccines. And, the history suggests that it's been very safe for the population. Now, the second kind of vaccine is the viral vector vaccine, okay, where you use another virus. In the current vaccine scenario, it is the adenovirus, and you use the spike proteins from the coronavirus, okay, and then deliver the entire vaccine. So this is the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is the trade name being Covishield. So this is also a very sorted, and we have a very long history of vaccines which are very successful with the same delivery mechanism or manufacturing mechanism. Dengue vaccine, Ebola vaccine, Zika virus vaccine, all of these are vector-based vaccines. So we have a very healthy history track record of these kinds of vaccines. Exactly why Indian government has adopted these two mechanisms at the earliest and have given them a very early emergency authorization. Both the Oxford AstraZeneca Covishield as well as Bharat Biotech Covaxin. Okay, and there are people who would say, "Okay, why not the Pfizer's and the Moderna, which the USA has developed?" Because now this is where the third form comes, nucleic acid virus vaccines, where we use the RNA and the DNA of the vaccine, the RNA and the DNA of the virus to prepare this. This has been the first time, uh, you know, in modern medicine that we have used such vaccines. We do not have a very long track record of this kind of a vaccine, what it delivers, how it affects, what is the efficacy, how will it affect the future. We really have no such data available. And secondly, in Indian scenarios where we do not have these high end systems for storage and a very tricky distribution networks to actually reach out to a billion of a population like India. So these
So the
vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer, they require very high-end negative temperatures to storage. -70 for Pfizer, -20 for Moderna. So these are the ones which we do not use, and we do not have a very long safe record for these vaccines. So we have not opted for that. The fourth being the viral subunit vaccine, which is a Novavax, which will also be coming with its phase 3 interim trial results in next 2 to 3 months. Hepatitis B, human papilloma virus, all these are subunit vaccines. So these are the four types of vaccines that are there. So now I'll focus more on the current hot debate between the Covishield and Covaxin.
right.
See, both of these vaccines are very safe. Let me start off with that. They're very safe. There have been already adversaries for both these vaccines who exactly are able to safely take it. A few I'll list it here. 18 years and above, ones who are not immunocompromised with any illnesses, lactating, pregnant females. So these are absolute general guidelines that I'm giving you. There are lists out there. So rather than you by hearting that list, it's better that you be honest with the person who is vaccinating you when they ask you with all your history. Be very forthcoming with your allergic history, your entire medical, surgical history, all the illnesses in the past, you know, and all the candid information. It's very imperative that you give the doctor all your details so that the person vaccinating you can eventually make a very well informed decision whether or not you fit in the criteria for the vaccine or no. Okay. So, see, both of these Covishield as well as Covaxin have their own advantages. One part being common is that both of them are manufactured in India. So we will have a very healthy flow of these vaccines in the coming months for the entire population at large. Both of them are very well, placed as far as their storage and distribution mechanisms are concerned. They are very stable in 2 to 8 degrees, which is like you can refrigerate in your own fridge. So these are very easy to deliver. Okay. And the important difference I would say is that while Covishield has already presented its phase 3 interim trial and has suggested efficacy between 60 to 90%, Covaxin is yet to present its phase 3 trial, but with the assistance of the government and the recommendation of the ICMR and the authority, they've gone ahead and taken that risk of delivering it. They seem to be very sure, considering their track record. Bharat Biotech, they've given them a clinical trial mode authorization for them. So currently there are more than 26,000 participants given Covaxin and are under this trial. So we will shortly have the interim results so that more data will exude more confidence across the country, and people will be more than happy to receive Covaxin as well. But as far as the technology goes, mind you, Covaxin is a whole virus vaccine. Okay, it's not just one component of the virus that is used, or what we call as the spike protein. So the current hullabaloo about the entire mutation coming from UK and Africa, especially what we call as the N501Y mutation in scientific code language. This mutation specifically is change in the spike protein. This spike protein is primarily where every vaccine is targeted per se. Okay, primarily. So it may change the effectivity later on. While when we have a whole virus vaccine, this may just be a boon because it is not just a spike protein, it's an entire virus. So when the immune system recognizes the whole virus with all the antigenic domains, it can offer a better immunity as compared to the other viral vector vaccines. Now this, mind you, is a theoretical assumption, yet the data needs to be proven. Now we will have to wait for Bharat Biotech to come up with an entire interim phase 3 trial. Okay. So these are the differences and of course all the advantages of both Covishield and Covaxin. And I urge everyone to please go ahead and take it without having much apprehensions. The good that it does to you and the society at large is much, much more than the mild side effects that it will come up with. Okay.
Dr. Sameer, I think we have some questions on that regard. What are the precautions and the side effects that can come with some of these vaccines? And another question that we would want to take is on how seriously does COVID affect small children, and are they at high risk due to COVID?
So let me quickly go through the vaccine side effects. Get this fact right, that the vaccine of COVID-19 is more reactogenic as compared to the normal flu vaccines that we are getting, the flu shots that we do get. So don't be alarmed by it. There are local and systemic side effects, and then there are very drastic side effects. The local side effects being pain at the site of the injection, small swelling would be there at that point. There will be induration in that site. Then just the pain in that particular arm. The systemic side effects would be the fever, the body ache, slight amount of upper respiratory symptoms might show in. You might have a nausea, a vomiting, maybe a bit of a diarrhea. So these are common side effects, tolerable side effects, and it may show up in not say more than 35 to 40% people. These are all tolerable side effects per se, and rest of them, as high as good 50 to 60%, would not show anything at all, and they'll be very happy to take this injection and just lead their routine life. Very, very small percentage, which is less than 2% in the current scenario, they show serious side effects. These are, of course, the anaphylactic reactions per se, where they develop heavy body rash, breathlessness, and palpitations are there, giddiness, fall. All these things are very serious adverse effects, which are less than 2%. But these are mostly seen on people who already have some or the other history of allergy per se. many people, they do not understand, or rather they do not recollect while they are getting immunized, to actually make the vaccinator aware of their allergic history. And many people do not really take it very seriously. The seasonal allergies and all, they come and go. They have they do ignore very routinely. Especially you will find this in Indian population. So when you go ahead and investigate on these matters, you will understand they already have a long history of allergy.
So,
So it's
Samir,
very safe. Yeah.
I think the question from there is, how do I know if I'm eligible for the vaccine? So I'm saying that the vaccinator, when they take your history and understand who you are, is the person who's going to give you a recommendation on whether you're eligible or not.
Not really. You always have all the guidelines which are very well displayed on any site, on the government site, on the COVID app, as well as you can just go to your family physician, get yourself checked, and ask him if you are eligible enough or no. Because it's very difficult for a layman to suddenly understand everything about the science. Vaccinator is the person who's the last person. Just because you have spoken to your family physician, you cannot go and force yourself into vaccination. You have to reveal everything, and he is the last caregiver to you, and he is the person who's going to deliver and even save you if anything goes wrong. So be honest there. That is where I meant that the vaccinator needs to know very much in details. But before that, there are a lot of guidelines which are already in place. Please visit the website. The there are good number of people who are very much eligible, and as in how the the phase of vaccination goes through, there will be more advertisement, there will be more awareness that will be created. The governments are coming up with a lot of awareness drives. Everyone will come to know slowly, steadily who are eligible, who are not, and
So
accordingly, you need to go ahead and get yourself vaccinated.
thank you, Dr. Samir. Coming back, we had a question that says, how seriously does COVID affect small children, and are they at high risk?
Okay. So, moving to a very important topic about our children, um, how this COVID-19 is going to affect them. Is there any severe form of disease affecting them? Now, um, from the current data of past year or so, we've come to know most children, especially less than 20 years, they seem to be remaining very mildly symptomatic, or rather asymptomatic altogether. But a very small population amongst them, and there are certain genetic influences to them, and something that is a matter of research, and every day new information is coming through. But until it's very certain, I would not want to comment on those areas. I would rather say it is still under research. They seem to develop what we have termed as a multi-inflammatory. Multiple body organs have shown signs of inflammation secondary to the COVID-19 infection. Of course, the percentage is less than 1%, mind you. Okay, so 99% children are not developing severe form of COVID. Okay, they all are very mild or rather asymptomatic. But less than 1% are coming up with this severe variant, which we are still studying. There are no exact answers to these. They behave like we have this Kawasaki's disease, which is a very established disease. These are the features which exactly are that way, where there is inflammation of the vessels, there are inflammation of multiple organ vessels, the heart, the lungs, the gastrointestinal tract, the kidneys, they do get infected. Infected in the sense they are inflamed and they show a lot of signs of damage. But these are very, very rare, and we should not be getting scared about it rather. But nevertheless, remain knowledgeable, remain precautious, So if your child is showing symptoms, always consult your pediatrician. Be in touch with them throughout the illness, and 99% of the people will be going through without much ado, and they should be much better. And even these multi-system involvement seems to respond well to the modality of treatment that we already know against all the autoimmune syndromes. So they seem to do eventually well. Very small percentage of people, they land up in a death scenario, which is nearly negligible. So yes, there is a severe form of infection in children, but it is near negligible and something that we should not be thinking of beyond a point, because that kind of a percentage value is less than routine, and especially in the Indian scenario. We have more deaths due to malnutrition, we have more deaths due to road accidents, we have more deaths due to any other sort of an infection, congenital heart diseases and all. So those, in terms of statistics, they are pretty much negligible. But yes, there is this severe infection called multi-inflammatory system syndrome. See, yes.
So, what are the guidelines on vaccines for children? Can the vaccine be given to children? And if they are not eligible, how safe is it to send them to schools? This is
See,
another.
considering a very small population of children are truly having any form of a serious infection, that has not been the priority. And as far as the clinical trials are concerned, we are looking at a very emergency authorization use right now. Less than 18 years are not eligible for these vaccines in the current guidelines. In the future, there have been many candidates that have been designed in a fashion for use, especially in children. One of them again being Bharat Biotech, which is coming up with an intranasal vaccine, which is a single drop in each nostril as a dose, like how we give a very basic oral polio dose. That will be an intranasal dose, and it's a single dose vaccine coming up. We've shown very promising results, especially in the preclinical stage. They're entering into a clinical trial phase, so this is a future prospect that we all must look forward to. And this will truly develop a preventive, it's aimed at preventing the infection, okay, altogether, not just preventing severe infection. So this is almost, as the government representative day before told, it would be a game changer if the Indian scientist, Dr. Ella, who is the director of Bharat Biotech, is very much successful in creating this intranasal vaccine. So that will be a very proud moment for us. So I'm looking forward to that vaccine for our children and for our future.
Thank you, Dr. Samir, and definitely looking forward to us as Indians being able to accomplish such game-changing technology and science. Is there a time frame that you think we need to wait 6 months, 8 months, 1 year in terms of the trial and the approvals for a vaccine like this?
See, for the intranasal vaccine, I believe they are still just starting the phase 1 clinical trial. So it's going to be at least a year before you would really see, a phase 3 clinical trial results coming through.
Okay.
So I don't see it entering the market before the end of 2021.
Right.
That will be the earliest, I would say.
But in the event of not having a vaccine and schools opening up, is there a recommendation on sending children to schools?
Well, that is something the government will have to really go through all the data, see the transmission chain, see the how the peaks are behaving, especially society to society, whether there are any spikes locally. Accordingly, the school decisions will have to be as per the local authority. There are too many factors to it as such, you know. And before the schools reopening, there has to be multiple guidelines and inspections that needs to be done before we land up in another disaster per se in the making. It's best to really learn and expect, what needs to be done and how it needs to be done before really sending our kids to the school. So, I mean, even the school authorities per se, they have a challenge at their hand. So I would request every parent to be very vigilant while they do send their kids to school, as and when they would try and do that per se. And there are always a pro and con to all of it per se, because there is also another angle to it where the children have a psychosocial angle to the children, the kind of delay in their milestones, the behavioral problems that they would develop by just being home all the time, the kind of education gap between the families and the children of whom are privileged enough to buy them a digital resource, say a phone and a laptop to work on. While there are families who really cannot afford, especially after the lockdown, they've lost their jobs, there's unemployment on the rise. So these children would suffer a lot. So there is a huge education gap that we're looking at in the future. So all of that needs to be balanced. So all these data need to be really worked upon. The job of the government is not over as yet. There is so many more socioeconomic factors that are to be taken into account, and before giving such directives as to whether to open the schools or not. But when it does happen, that is the time we'll debate in that particular time and scenario as to whether or not it will be safe enough for the parents to send their kids to the school. Also, it will depend on the local factors there itself, how the school is being managed, how are the ventilation systems of the school, are the teachers as well as the entire school staff observing all the principles of preventing COVID-19 infection? What are the guidelines as well as what are the measures that they have already taken to avoid? So all of that matters a lot. These are aspects when, as in how we go about, the government goes about directing us, we should be taking a very, very local level calls as to whether or not we want to go. But I would suggest don't go into a nutshell and a fear psychosis. Equip yourself with enough knowledge and take a very well informed, consultative decision. That is the only suggestion I would rather give right now to all the parents out there for sending their kids to school.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Samir. I think just for us to be informed and consultative, this entire session has been useful in a lot of different aspects. Maybe one last question before we close. Any diet or other restrictions that we need to follow after we take the vaccine?
As far as vaccination goes, most important being you shouldn't be consuming alcohol. Okay, especially there are varying guidelines that I've seen. Some of them are saying probably for the next 48 hours. A few of them are saying at least for the next 4 weeks, and a few of them are saying at least for next 40 days. You're not supposed to have alcohol. So these are very general guidelines. Smoking needs to be avoided. Then the all allergen foods per se that you are known of, they should be avoided as best as possible. These are the general guidelines that have come up. They are amongst the most important ones per se. Otherwise, I believe you can go about doing your routine. There is nothing more to it as such. So this is just it as of now.
Thank you, Dr. Samir. Do we have any other questions? I would believe we've covered all the questions shared to us by the participants and what we had on chat. Thank you so much, Dr. Sameer, for being with us today. I'd also want to have Swati, our host, give us some closing comments. Thank you for giving me the opportunity as well.
Yeah, I think big thanks to Sameer. I think this is, I mean, personally, I have just one last question before we, wrap up this call. I think I have personally been extremely paranoid about this entire scenario, and I know several other members here. Some of us are in different spectrums of paranoia. So, Dr. Sameer, any few words for us, people like us? What are the things in priority that we should probably be extremely careful about, not worry about? Like you rightly said, maybe a little bit more logical about some of these things. So, just a few words if you can share with us. And in the meanwhile, if anybody else has any last questions, please put it up on chat so that we can ask me before we wrap up the call. Yes, Amir, over to you.
Yeah. See, now let me briefly put it that the worst of COVID 19 is definitely over. So it's time to get knowledgeable from this point and take informed decisions and build consensus around before giving judgmental, opinions about anything. Now the vaccination is out. 2021 has started off with a very, very positive note, and we've done reasonably well compared to many, established forward countries, so-called pioneers. Nevertheless, uh, we need to be very much mindful. I feel there are certain important lessons as far as the vaccine goes. I will be focusing more on vaccine right now because now the dark phase of understanding the pathophysiology and the COVID-19 is a bit behind us now. So these important lessons again would be directed to vaccination, considering that is the first priority right now. The first step to normalizing the lives as we know it in the past prior to the pandemic. So I'll just quickly go through certain important lessons I would say that everyone should keep in mind while this vaccination drive is on. One, COVID-19 vaccines are very safe. Please go ahead and take it when your number is up. COVID-19 vaccines are way more reactogenic as compared to the flu shots that you take. So expect mild side effects. Do not panic and be very, very honest about your entire history, your allergy, your medical history, even for that matter, all your personal habits, habituations, whether you're drinking, whether you smoke, whether you have, psychotropic drugs, whatever you are doing, be very candid and open, especially to your own family physician and your vaccinator prior to getting vaccinated so that you know how risky this entire vaccine delivery would be for you, especially, so understand all these aspects before getting vaccinated. Magic that once the vaccine shot has been given, you suddenly are off all the masks, you don't need the sanitizations, you can just hug around everywhere. That is not what this vaccine does. Very definitely, they prevent or reduce the severity of the COVID 19 illness, which is what our primary objective is, to not cause death, to not cause heavy morbidity, to not cause so many socio-economic loss and burden to the family and the society at large. That is the purpose of vaccine. And the vaccine is effective only and only when everyone takes it. Okay, so that is important takeaway. Apart from that, once you are vaccinated, yes, there are early signs which shows that as early as from 14th day of the vaccination of the first dose of vaccination, you do find antibodies developing, but the maximum protection seems to come 4 weeks after the second dose of the vaccine. So first needs to be followed very importantly and very, very judiciously with the second dose. Only and only then will you have a good, lasting secondary immune system response, which will ensure at least a year of immunity. And post that, we have no data. As of now, we know, as of now, we go, we will understand more as to what these vaccines really, protect us and how long will they protect us from. So these are the most important lessons, I believe. You all must just keep it in mind while this vaccination drive is on across India. And I believe there are certain myths and facts that I think I should just clarify. Very quickly, I'll go through it. I've just seen while I've been dealing with the regular follow-ups and all, I do come up with number of things, and certainly this myth needs to be busted. So let me just quickly go through this, okay, and see if it answers many of these myths. Myth number one: vaccine contains harmful heavy metals like mercury and the aluminum. Well, it does contain aluminum salt. It's not a metal, it's a salt. And it is a consumable salt which boosts the immune system in general, and it has no real side effect otherwise. And there is no mercury or any other metal that is used in COVID vaccine. So please go out there, it's very safe. Myth number two: vaccine contains some kind of a pig, monkey, or human fetal tissues. So please, all those religious people there who are thinking on all these guidelines, getting all the sorts of fake news and fake SMSs and WhatsApps, please, there is no such content of pig, monkey, or a human fetus which is used in these vaccines. Please understand this very clearly. COVID vaccines are not safe because they are developed very, very fast. Well, the benefits of these vaccines which are developed fast, scientifically it's a big feat. Nevertheless, we have a very high and a very, very reliable track record that these vaccines are relatively safe. The question mark always is about the level of efficacy. For that also, Covishield already has presented its data, and Covaxin is going to present it soon, say in a month or two. So eventually, I think we should believe our scientists, our epidemiologists, our government, our research institutes, and back them. And please take the vaccine without hesitancy, because the benefits, they outweigh the side effects or the harm without any doubt. So please go ahead and comfortably take it in.
Dr. Sameer, thank you so much. I think this was an amazing session. A lot of questions. Looks like finally everyone's going to have a good night's sleep after getting all these questions answered. At least I will. I'm also not as concerned about the vaccine as I was earlier after hearing from you so much. Thanks everyone. I think now we can exit the group. Thank you, Sameer.